Hey, how's it going?
Good, thanks. So you probably want to make me a co-host.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hey, Alex.
I edited that resolution and emailed it to you, Anisha.
Yeah, I just got it. And Megan, I sent it to you so you can pull it up.
Yeah, hang on one sec. I'm just going to
Stylistic edits, grammatical edits, and one whereas clause didn't have a noun or a verb.
Okay.
So I guessed, but it could be wrong. What the interpretation, what it's supposed to be saying.
I don't think any of us like looked at them very carefully. I was like,
I didn't look at the other one because it's just like a letter to people. I didn't even see that one, right? I'm sorry.
It's fine. It's going to be an interesting meeting.
Okay. November.
Also, maybe the therefore clause, the first one, shouldn't exactly say what it says. Maybe it should say something like that we support them in doing both at the same time. So doing both, supporting small businesses and continuing to, keep everyone safe. Because otherwise it reads kind of like a whereas clause.
Right.
Sorry, guys. I just want to. So if I share my screen, how do I get back to where I see all the participants?
I think you
Unshare.
Yeah, at the bottom.
Oh, you can't. You have to unshare. Okay. Oh, I see. Hold on. I see. Participants. It's just the three of us right now anyway.
It'll go up to 5 or 6, I think.
I see it, yeah. I've heard what?
Or did you want October up?
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I was just thinking about something to put up because of, I guess we're voting on. No, I don't need that. I could just put the actual agenda up, right?
I guess so, yeah.
I don't actually need to put anything up right now if I don't want to.
Yeah.
There we go. Hi, Bruce.
Hi.
Are you with DOB?
No, I got an email. I live in the district in the community board area and was told there might be discussion about amplified sound. And I've been struggling with a restaurant that does a lot of that on the weekends.
Gotcha. Thanks for coming.
Sure.
Anisha, do you want me to put the agenda up?
We can in just a second. Actually, I think that we'll do our minutes and then we'll have the DOB presentation. So the DOB.
Yeah.
Thank you everybody for joining. We'll start in just a minute or two. We'll let a few other folks log on. Oh, Clint is on. One, two, three, four.
You know what, this doesn't really help anybody because it doesn't give like a nice neat list of the agenda.
No.
I'm just gonna take it off.
Yeah, that's just to use for take minutes, really.
Yeah. Hi, Susan.
Hi.
Okay, I think we can. Do we have a quorum? Let's see. 2, 3, 4. I think we can go ahead and start in just a second. Welcome to the November Economic Development Committee meeting. Let's do a couple of housekeeping things. So if you are not a committee member, if you could write your name and affiliation in the chat so that we can have a record of all of the attendance. If you have questions throughout any of the meeting, please use the raise your hand button in Zoom. I don't always see everybody's actual hands if they physically raise their hand. So today we have a couple of things on the agenda. Let's see, but we can start with an approval of the minutes from October. So Megan, if you'd like to do a roll call vote.
Anisha Stephen,
Yes.
Megan Joy, yes. Alistair Economakis,
Yes.
Andrea Gordillo,
Yes.
Herman Hewitt. Herman,
He's not on. I don't think.
Joe Kearns,
He won't be here tonight.
David Louie,
Yes.
Alexandra Militano,
Yes.
Richard Ropiak, Richard, you there? Rodney Washington,
I don't think Rodney's on either.
okay. Andrew Comey,
I'm here.
okay. Richard or Rodney?
Nope, I don't think they're on yet, if they're gonna join.
Okay.
Okay, great. So we have a presentation from the Department of Buildings and then 3 resolutions tonight. So let's go ahead and start with Josh Adams from DOB, who's going to speak about winterizing spaces for small businesses and other types of institutions, I guess. So I'll hand it over to Josh and Megan. Josh had sent over a couple of sort of flyers. If you could pull those up, that would be great. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. Joshua Adams, Department of Buildings. Can y'all hear me well?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Just wait for those. If you could, I think I sent over 2. One you can bring up right now is Buildings Bulletin 2020 of 19.
You got it.
So while she's doing that, I'll just speak a little bit of the background of it, of the of what the Department of Buildings is requiring. So, oh, perfect. So you could scroll down to overview of section 3. My apologies. Overview of planning. Perfect. There we go. Thank you. Okay, so so just a little background. So, really in conjunction with Department of Transportation's Open Restaurants program for sidewalk and roadway dining, the Department of Buildings issued some following guidance on about how owners of restaurants can install outdoor heat equipment and obtain the required permits and inspections that are necessary to operate natural gas heating and electrical heating in a safe and efficient manner. So what the Department of Buildings has determined is that the installation of electric heaters is allowed on both sidewalks and roadways. Propane heaters and natural gas radiant heaters are allowed on sidewalks only and are prohibited on roadways. So any open flame natural gas heaters are not permitted. The use of propane and natural gas for heating requires a permit from the FDNY as well, and propane heating requirements compliance with FDNY regulations for outdoor use, handling, and a secure outdoor tank storage, if applicable overnight. All 3 of these options may be considered for outdoor seating areas within private property as well, provided they comply with the respective requirements outlined in the bulletins 2020 of 19 that you're seeing here, and 2020 of 18, which relates to electrical heating guidance. So for business owners, the way that you go about obtaining outdoor heating is the first step they need to do is hire a license for, at least for natural gas and propane. We require that business owners hire a licensed master plumber. That licensed master plumber is going to go through basically what you see here under the evaluation. They're going to determine the number of heaters required based on how large the space is for the outdoor seating. They're going to inspect the gas system for your building. The licensed master plumber should determine the system size for your building based on the capacity that your building can withstand, as well as provide safe connections. The licensed master plumber needs to determine that safe connections are going to be in place for your outdoor heating and space. That's the same with propane as well. If you could also scroll down, if you don't mind, to the next page. Other safety requirements as well. These refer to like manual shutoff valves and other emergency use and locking systems to ensure that your plumbing fixtures are secure. And we're going to determine if the licensed master plumber should determine whether flax gas hose connectors are desirable. So this highlighted portion states under the Open Restaurants program, flexible gas hose connectors may be used to connect the portable outdoor heating unit to the gas outlets. Now, your licensed master plumber is going to determine what that use is based on what they find when reviewing your plumbing fixtures inside your space before you get outdoor heating. Scroll down to 7 if you don't mind. This is probably the most relevant portion for a lot of you owners who are planning to do outdoor heating. What the licensed master plumber is going to do after going through all those steps is they're going to file for plans and permits. So under this open restaurant program, the licensed master plumber can file natural gas heaters with the department through an expedited process that's called limited alteration application. Basically, they file this LAA through DOB Now Build. And once they file it, they need to identify and state on the scope that it's for the open restaurants program when they're filing for any natural gas or propane. That's the same for electrical as well, which I'll get to in a few. So after the work is completed, the licensed master plumber must file for inspection through DOB Now Inspections. And if you scroll down a little further, my apologies. I wish I could scroll it, but access. You're going to see a list of, go back up. It's right at the top where the blue text is. Perfect. Right at the top, once you hire your plumber and they conduct all the necessary work that they need to get the outdoor heating, then they will send these inspection requests to Manhattan. There's other relevant boroughs as well, but I highlighted Manhattan since this is CB3 in Manhattan. They need to submit this request to Inman Plumbing IR at buildingsnyc.gov. Now, no gas work can be performed without an approved LAA filing and permit, but gas work can begin once the required permits are obtained. And in most instances, once they submit this LAA request to the department, we review it and the permits could be submitted rather quickly or immediately. After all that is done and the inspections are done, the owner is permitted to contact Con Edison or the other utility company and have that gas turned on for your outdoor heating use. One other thing that the plumber as well as the electrician must make sure is that when they're connecting these flexible hoses from the indoor plumbing to the outdoor heating fixtures, they need to ensure that there's no tripping hazards when going across the sidewalk. So there needs to be some sort of protective covering. If you could scroll down a little bit, you'll see the section I'm referring to. They need to make sure that there's some protective covering and that it's not impeding access for individuals using the sidewalk as well. You need to ensure that remains safe and no tripping hazards are in the way. You need to please note as well that flexible gas hose connectors should not be laid across any bike lane unless approved otherwise by the Department of Transportation. Now, I have provided this buildings bulletin in the chat as well. If you can see in the chat, I have provided the link, and right next to it, natural gas propane for any of you owners who want to pursue natural gas. Now, if we could go to the next buildings bulletin, which relates to electricity. It's 2020 of 18, and we can start that on the second page.
Can you see the new one now?
Yes. Scroll down. Yes, this is the one. Thank you. Scroll down to the next page right at the top, where the highlighted portion is. So the same steps pretty much apply for if you're going to pursue electric heating for your outdoor heating. The electrician that you hire will pretty much do the same thing that their plumber is going to do. They're going to determine the number of heaters required that you want to use for your space. They're going to perform load calculations within your space to ensure that the amount of heaters that you are wanting to use, that the electric load within that building can handle that amount of power. Additionally, electrician is going to inspect the existing electric system. Now, if there's any instances where they find that there's other steps you need to take to ensure that your electric system can handle the amount of heaters you want to use, then that's a separate permit you might have to obtain to get the electric system up to date. So the electrician is also going to file permits with the department. Now, with electrical work, the electrical work cannot begin without the permit being approved, but the electrical work can begin with the requirement once the permit is obtained. Excuse me, hold on. There's a section here. Yes, here it is. So once the electrician obtains the permits, conducts the works, and schedules the inspection for any kind of electrical heaters to help you save time, the DOB is allowing the installation to be energized and the heaters to be put to use as long as the electrician deems it safe and is for use in advance of a DOB inspection or sign off. So once the electrician conducts the work for the outdoor heating and they contact the department and request an inspection, you may use those outdoor heaters while awaiting for the inspection to occur. Of course, the electrician must determine that it is safe by letting the department know in advance. This same thing with temporary cords crossing over the sidewalk. Please ensure that these cords are protected, that you have rubber safety covers on top to ensure that there's no hanging wires, there's no tripping hazards, they're not blocking travel lanes, and in addition, they're not blocking bike lanes unless otherwise approved by the Department of Transportation. Another issue is that you may have questions about possibly plugging in a electric heater indoors and then taking the cable outdoors. The department is not permitting that. The department is not permitting any cords. Cords shall not be installed through doors, windows, or similar openings. So you must hire an electrician to conduct that work. Follow up with the department, conduct the work, request the inspection, and after the inspection is performed and approved, you should be good to go to use your electric heaters. Same with your natural gas and propane heaters as well. I think that is about the majority of it when it comes to requesting natural gas and propane and electric. If there are any additional questions, please let me know. I'm here for you.
Thank you so much. If there are any questions, feel free to raise your hand in, like with the Zoom feature. If anybody has any questions, and there are a number of them. Susan, you're up first.
Thank you. So on First Avenue and Second Avenue, we have outdoor street seating on the outside of a bike lane. And your instructions say that anything running through the bike lane has to be approved by DOT, but there's no guidelines on what kind of what would be approved by DOT. Is there more information on that? Because it seems like that's going to be a big issue.
It's my understanding that if you are going to be blocking a bike lane, or if you intend to your space to block a bike lane, then you must contact DOT to request that permission. Now, we don't have anything on our end because DOT is mostly the spearhead behind the open restaurants program. The department is really just a regulatory agency to ensure that the natural gas or that the heating requirements are up to code.
Okay, thank you.
Now, as far as there was something I wanted to speak about. I know there's, I don't know if you wanted me to discuss it, Susan, about the any kind of enlargements, like the similar restaurants we were having some talks about. Something.
So, well, I put the question to Anisha, but that's certainly an issue that has come up in CB3 about enlargements of restaurants. Are you talking about on the public side?
I'll just clarify. So when we're talking about these outdoor seating, if you are trying to, heat your outdoor space, any outdoor seating, if it's going to be connected to the building itself, that would constitute an enlargement, right? So any outdoor spaces that are connected to the building, to the facade of the building, you would need a separate permit away from these natural gas and propane electric permits that you're requesting here. Now, that would be some sort of alteration 1 permit. That would require a licensed design professional to hire and submit plans to the department. And that would be a much more lengthy request compared to the request here to do flexible lines and electric lines to the outdoor space instead of doing an enlargement yourself. That would require a very much more in-depth review. So, if that's something that you are looking to do, that's a separate information away from what I'm providing here today.
And so the reason this is coming up is because businesses have done this without permits and
Sure. liable
to get huge fines.
Got it.
Right. Yes. Obviously, there are fines attached to that for work without a permit. obviously you can save yourself a major headache and a lot of time and money as well by just, going through this process, ensuring that you have your licensed master plumber or electrician as well to conduct that work in a safe and proper and up to code manner. Doing the work yourself, and then of course getting caught would be a much more long process and much more drawn out process, and would be a major headache for yourself to do that. So it's best to just follow these guidelines and just ensure that you're doing it the proper way, and ensure that you don't have any violations and keep your restaurant moving along.
So we have a number of questions. So Alistair, you're next.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I have comments as well as kind of questions. My architect, my commercial tenants, etc., have said DOB has been extremely difficult to deal with because they have moved the entire system to an online process. So getting questions and answers from people that are online is very difficult and very time consuming. And it's not a very efficient. Things are taking an extremely long time to get processed. I think as far as small businesses go, with regards to getting electrical permits or plumbing permits for the gas work, I think that's going to be a high barrier for them to do, because again, this is work that's eventually really going to be temporary, right? A plumbing permit's a few $1,000s, an electrical permit's a few $1,000s, let alone when DOB comes, there may be other issues that come up. And I guess, just on the plumbing side, my understanding is to get gas turned on in any type of situation is a long process. It takes a long time to do so. We're going to be in the summer months if someone really goes through this process from start to finish with 100% compliance. That's my guess. I'd love to be proven wrong. I assume with the gas plumbing inspections, and here's a question, you are going to require the DOB pressure testing, which is at 10 times working pressure back to the meter. Usually when people go and test, and this is why we have all these gas issues everywhere, is when DOB insists on having the pressure test at 10 times working pressure, things don't hold because they're old, and you get a few leaks here and there because you're putting much more pressure into the pipes than their usual working pressure. Do you know if in this situation, DOB is going to insist on that pressure test that usually causes a lot of problems for a lot of people?
Well, I know that we're requiring, gas roughing and testing after the performance of the work as part of the inspection as well. As far as the exact pressure test, I'm not a technical person myself, but I would imagine, we're talking about gas here, so a lot of safety tests would probably be involved with the inspection just to ensure that there's no leaks or such.
Yeah, but the thing is with Con Ed's involved and DOB's not involved, they test at working pressure. And for some reason, when DOB starts to get involved, and it's a different standard, DOB has a different standard, they ask for pressure tests at 10 times the pressure. And that's why the minute DOB gets involved, it becomes a much bigger problem when you're dealing with gas. So again, I understand this. I just don't see small businesses adapting to this because it's going to be cost prohibitive, time prohibitive, and it's going to cause issues, both on the electrical side, because the electrical side, a lot of stores won't have the electrical capacity for the heaters, which draw a lot of power. So they'll have to upgrade the electric. I don't know if they want to undergo that cost and that lengthy cost. And on the plumbing side, it's difficult. Let me ask you another question. Can they avoid the DOB testing if they get propane tanks? Are there any permits required for propane?
We're requiring inspections for both. We're requiring a licensed master plumber to come in and conduct work for both natural gas and propane, as well as inspections for both gas and propane.
You have those heaters that have the propane tank in them. Is that okay? Because that doesn't involve the building per se.
You're talking about excuse me. You're talking about standalone combustible propane that sits under the tent without connecting to any hoses or such.
Correct. That's part of the heater.
Let me double check on that one because why don't you put what the question is standalone propane, right?
Yeah. If that's a way to avoid the plumbing permits, I guess, because it's not connected to the building in any way.
We'll take it down and follow up with you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll follow up. Yeah, you can send it to me. Yeah, by email or all these questions, and I can get answers from them. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Joshua.
So
Sure.
we'll take a couple of committee members' questions next. Megan, and then we'll do Andrew and Alex.
Thanks. I mean, I guess it's just more of a comment, but you know, as a business owner, also it was incredibly frustrating to hear the mayor announce that, you know, we would be able to use propane heaters and electrical heaters through the winter to get us through, and then it comes out with regulations 2 weeks later that makes it virtually impossible to use either. You know, and in that time period, everyone races to get the materials because there's been a shortage of materials. When you've got over 10,000 businesses all doing the exact same thing, there's a shortage on lumber, there's a shortage on plexiglass, there's a shortage on roofing. So when they said, hey, you can use heaters, everyone went out and spent thousands of dollars buying propane heaters, which we are now basically not allowed to use because this rules around the storage of the propane is makes it virtually impossible. You can't be stored inside, can't be stored on the sidewalk, can't be left on premise. It's so, you know, I appreciate the thought, and I think the city's actually jumped through rings to try to make things work for us restaurants, but I feel like the heating thing is a miss. All of the options are too time consuming, they're too expensive for us, we don't have any money right now, and the regulations are make it virtually impossible to utilize.
Andrew?
So I have a couple of questions because if you walk the streets of the East Village right now, the vast majority of businesses that are winterizing are not following these codes. There are extension cords running out of windows through trees. There are big propane heaters actually in the street, not just on the sidewalk. I'm sure, as I do this for a living, that people are not using licensed electricians or licensed plumbers. I'm not saying all the businesses, I'm sure there are some businesses, but this is like the Wild West out there, and they're actually adding permanent structures to the sides of their buildings. And while I appreciate the need for folks to do this, as a pedestrian, it's becoming quite hazardous out there with this lack of following these codes. So is DOB in a position to enforce these rules and regulations? Because right now, most of the businesses, I would say, that have installed this stuff are not following these guidelines that you've posted up here.
Absolutely. The department is required to enforce this. I mean, and especially if it relates to, you know, any kinds of enlargements, propane storage, electrical wiring coming out of the building that shouldn't be coming out of the building without being, you know, without being safely, you know, covered.
Because while we obviously want to help businesses, we don't want people sitting in those homemade buildings getting hurt. We don't want people getting shocked. Frankly, we don't want apartment buildings having fires because old circuit breakers are overloaded. So who do people call if they see these violations Is it just 311 and report, you know,
Uh,
illegal wiring or illegal work? Like, how does this get enforced?
Yes, you would want to report it to 311. Additionally, you could also report these issues, you know, to your community board, your council member, state representative as well. You know, send it to 301. If it's a complaint about electrical wiring coming out of the building, or propane storage in front of the building, or sorry, unsafe propane storage in front of the building, as soon as you submit that 301 request and it's received by phone or through online, the department, if it comes to the department automatically creates an inspection request for that complaint.
Right. I guess my question though is that's relying on residents to make these observations. Some may not want to do that. So is the Department of Building doing inspections, or are they coming out, or are they only going to come out if somebody complains?
We mostly come out, we're a very complaint driven agency. As far as like construction sites that are doing like a major construction, we do periodically inspections for those that are either active. As far as as far as the issues that you were seeing that we're not knowing about, if they didn't apply for a permit to conduct that work, you know, then it's likely that, you know, we didn't have inspectors coming by to see that. Now, in the event that you see it, you know, please report it to 301, contact your community board, council member's office, and have that information come to us. So we may go out there and inspect it to ensure it's safe, and ensure that there's no, you know, public or property hazard at that location.
And my last question focuses on the attachments or expansion of the buildings. They're supposed to post a permit like any other construction if they receive a permit?
Of course, that goes for electric and plumbing work as well.
Oh, it goes for everything.
Correct. If they're doing plumbing work in the space, then that permit must be posted conspicuously either on the front door of the building, or it's usually on the front door of the building. But please note that, you know, if you have a building, say, just going to come up with some random address here, 15, you know, East 3rd Street, and that goes to 17th East 3rd Street, and then there's an AKA on 4th Street or something like that, the permit, wherever the work is being performed, that's where the permit must be posted. So if the work is happening on 15 East 3rd Street, permit must be there. But if there's another entrance in the other side of the building on 4th Street, for example, the permit does not need to be posted on that side because the work is not being performed in that space, if that makes sense. But any kind of work, permits must be posted no matter what, if the work was approved by the department. If it's minor work, painting, you know, moving off like electrical, you know, like outlet covers, something like that, you know, minor work like that, those don't require permits, and permits don't need to be posted if there is no permit to begin with.
All right, Alex?
I was just going to voice the same concerns as Megan and Andrew, in that these seem very complicated for small business owners to be able to comply with. And also, like Andrew, I see already, at least with respect to electrical wiring, it's everywhere. I think Susan mentioned First and Second Avenues having bike lanes, and I see electrical wiring crossing First and Second Avenue, you know, to accommodate different uses that may not actually be permitted by DOB or other agencies within these structures, and are probably also creating hazards, given I doubt that they're being done with any input from any electricians. But it gives me greater concern that that businesses may resort to trying to winterize their locations, which are just these small, for the most part, wooden or some other flimsy structure that, yes, could be susceptible to creating something that might endanger the people who are actually sitting within it, and they're tiny. And there's not much of an enforcement mechanism other than what the residents on the street see. You know, and report. it seems like if we're prepared to do this, then we should have a better way of enforcing or policing it or inspecting it. Whether or not it's a sort of regular inspections or periodic inspections to ensure that everything is compliant. That's
Right.
just a concern I have and a consideration that might be made. And I
Um,
get we're all suffering. We all don't have resources. We all don't have time, and we're all struggling to work in ways that if we can't even can even do that, that we couldn't before with, limited abilities. So it's not so easy for DOB either. I get that.
so Laura, you're next, and then we'll do Olympia and Clint.
Thanks. I'm from the East Village Community Coalition. I'm Laura Sewell. And just to explain, we both have had a long history of supporting the local independent businesses in the East Village and residents in the East Village. So, just to follow up on what's already been said, I'm taking notes to give this information, and we'll circulate the materials that you shared with, our local merchant groups, because they're mostly running their restaurants right now. But I am very concerned about the enforcement. We've had, the open restaurants program has been running for months now, and we already have enforcement difficulty with the existing structures. Some are temporary structures. And now we've had a pretty cold couple of months, and a lot of our merchants are just enclosing these temporary spaces even further, to the point where they're like, what's the difference between being in there and being indoors, except that you can't get out. There's not a means of egress from inside the corral. So, and I have seen the same thing that has been mentioned. I have seen the kerosene heaters that look like a lamp on the sidewalks right next to these. So I don't know what the solution is, but it seems that a complaint-driven enforcement, which relies on residents to complain against their neighboring businesses that are struggling, is really far from ideal. I wish we could, and places that don't apply for a permit aren't inspected, and it's really hard to get them inspected because they're not part of the program. So I don't know what solutions, and I second Alex's acknowledgement that the city is responding to a very challenging time, and everyone's stretching beyond how they normally would operate. But what else could we do? I know DOT went out and looked at every restaurant at first, and not just post-permit. They were involved in the process, and I think that did help some things from being derailed, but they can't keep that up. So, and how is DOB working with DOT? Sorry, I know that's a lot, but that's what I'm being asked.
So even restaurants that aren't involved in the open restaurant program, Department of Buildings can inspect any building within the city. It doesn't matter if it's part of the open restaurants program or not. If there's an issue or concern at that location, and the department can go out and inspect and issue violations if warranted, of course. As far as our steps, now when we issue these locations permits, any location that really has permits, the department does do periodic inspections like compliance inspections, tenant protection plan inspections, something along those. We conduct these inspections periodically as long as the permit is in place. Now, sorry, the last question that you asked, Laura, trying to recall it.
The DOB and DOT, how are you?
Oh, how are we working together? So DOT, like as I mentioned earlier, small business services as well, I believe, is involved. They're the main forefront of the open restaurants program. They're handling it. As far as DOB, like I said, our side is the regulatory efforts. Now we do remain in contact in terms of like if we receive complaints about a space, DOB or DOT may send something over to DOB, a referral for us to go and inspect for that request. Any issues that you see for DOT, it's expected that you send it to DOT, but the department of buildings also can refer cases to DOT as well. For example, issues where you had suggested or that you had stated wiring crossing the street, or temporary structures crossing into the street, or maybe there's a temporary structure that crosses into the street or into the sidewalk and is also connected to the building. DOB and DOT could probably conduct a joint inspection for this space. But as far as actually the program itself, the open restaurants program, that is a DOT program. DOB is the regulatory enforcement agency to ensure that all the requirements to obtain heating or through the sidewalk and out of the building is maintained safe, and this code is up to code.
And sorry, thank you. And I get that the gas and the electric is you guys, and will there be like a cure period or something before people are fined, or how does that?
Oh, you mean once they obtain a violation, if they conduct the work? It depends. If it's a class 1 violation, which means that it's an immediately hazardous violation, it needs to be corrected, immediately, forthwith is what our code states. Those don't have a cure date. Those are required to be fixed immediately. Additionally, you must also obtain go to the oath hearing at oath court. Class 2 and 3 both have cures, but that's going to be dependent upon the inspector's findings based on what date that is to cure the violation.
Okay. And just for residents and for businesses, I get the gas and the propane and the permitting, the electric permitting process, but if people are just building like a more permanent structure with an eye toward winterizing, who is overseeing that work? Is that both agencies?
If they're building it, so the outdoor seating itself, those little wooden-like structures that you see that are like kind of in the roadway, they don't obtain permits from the department to build that little hut, right? Now, they connect that space to the building, right? That's an enlargement, okay? That's an enlargement. Additionally, I believe that's crossing over the sidewalk and probably blocking a portion of the sidewalk as well. Now, that's probably something that the inspector is going to have to find once they go out. If it's connected to the building, why the structure is connected, that'll be work without a permit. That's not what the open restaurants program is suggested.
Thank you. That was
of course,
very helpful.
Okay?
Thank you.
So we'll go to Olympia and then Clint. There are still quite a number of hands up. So in the essence of time, if we could, limit the number of questions asked, we can send anything to Joshua after also.
So,
Can I just answer some of
Mr. Adams, are you, what is your role at DOB? Sorry, I missed the beginning of the meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. I probably should have, I jumped right in. Joshua Adams. I work for community engagement and programming. So I do external affairs.
Great, because, and you just said that if this little structure is not connected to the building, DOB doesn't have any role?
The structure itself for the open restaurants program, they're getting permits from the Department of Transportation.
Okay.
Right. So roadway is DOT. DOB, we have meets and bounds of the property. So everything everything around the building itself, the meets and bounds of that property line, Department of Building. Now, connecting anything from the building to the outdoor seating, we have a say on that because.
So I know, because I know Anissa wants us to run quickly. Basically, my concern, I'm not sure then it is a DOB issue because it has to do with the sidewalk structures. And the fact that 2 days ago, when it was very windy on Avenue B, actually a piece of like wooden wall fell next to me, and a roof was also tilting and breaking up and down of these plexi structures because they're not fixed. And the second concern that I have, that maybe somebody else alluded to earlier, but they didn't, I think, state it clearly, is a public health concern. Because it is becoming windy and cold, they're going against the very idea of why we have these sheds out there. They are enclosing it completely. So there is no air circulation within those cubicles. And so this is going to be festering for COVID-19. And so this is, you know, very worrisome. So and you know, I have ideas about how we could avoid both issuing too many, you know, tickets to these poor people who are trying to make a living, but without jeopardizing public health and, you know, nearby residents and people walking by. But it definitely, that's why I asked you, what is your role? I think it's probably, there should be a decision above DOB about, you know, putting resources available to people to prevent this. It cannot be complaint driven. Otherwise, we're going to have horrible incidents if that's the way you want to go about that. But I don't think it's your purview. But so basically, the concerns that I have for the temporary structures you're saying is under DOT purview, not DOB, right?
If that temporary structures in the street,
Yes.
DOT,
Yeah.
you see that temporary structure has wires coming from it, and the complaint is about wiring, plumbing, heating.
Yeah, it's DOB. Okay.
It does. If it's connected to the building, like a enlargement, as I mentioned, then it's us and DOT too, because they both play a role there. Okay.
Okay. Thank
Build the
you.
street, and they connected. All right.
Clint has had his hand up for a while. So Clint and then Susan.
I just have two quick, hopefully simple questions. I know you mentioned, and I saw it listed in the bulletin, I haven't had a chance to go back and read it thoroughly, about wires for cords for the heating being extended over the sidewalk or over the right of way. Is that only apply to heating? Or for example, if they don't have a heater in their street seating, but they have lights and they have a cord running over the sidewalk to their street seating structure, does that fall under all of these electrical requirements, or can that be out their window across the sidewalk?
No. It needs to be covered. Can't be a tripping hazard. Can't be hanging up in the air. It needs to be safely secured. We're talking about electrical lines. So if they're going to connect any electrical lines to that outdoor seating, it needs to be covered along the sidewalk with those rubber coverings that I mentioned, right? You can't just have wires coming out of the windows. Hanging out over the place.
Okay, because I've seen, I do see that a lot of them have, just for lighting, even not even for heater. So I just wanted to clarify if that was still applies to just lights or to heating, but to anything with electric is basically what you're saying, right?
Yeah, that's going on now. Send it in for a 3-in-1 inspection, or leave it with CB3 and I'll schedule something for it later
Okay.
this week or
And
something.
the only other quick question I had was, there was a listing on the heating side with the propane that open flames are not permitted. I've seen a lot around this neighborhood and in some other neighborhoods. There are those torch-like things.
Tiki torches.
No, they're not tiki torches. They're actually, I think, propane on the bottom, but they have a large flame that's about 3 feet high that's kind of in a pyramid shape. Are those permitted? I think I've seen some of them that top is enclosed in glass, and I've seen a couple that it's just open. Are those permitted, or is that prohibited?
If it's open flame, it's not going to be permitted as stated. Now, leave this address with this location with us so we can take a look into it, and leave that question with them, because I'm not too sure exactly what you're referring to. I may have not seen it specifically, but leave it with us. We'll take a look at it and see if it's permitted or not.
It's sort of similar probably to the freestanding propane.
But we're talking about open flame, or is it a secured sort of casing?
I think there's possible that there's two different, but we'll send you more information.
Give me more information. We'll take a look, and I'll follow up with the community board on that.
Cool. Susan.
Okay, I just wanted, in response to some of the questions, as far as complaints, the community board office, along with the council office, we work with Josh several times a week. So if you have a complaint, please let us know, and we discuss it and follow up. People are very frustrated with DOT not inspecting. DOB is inspecting. The process takes too long because once they give a summons, the person is allowed to continue until there's a hearing. But that all happens. I mean, it all happens within a month. So we do get actual inspections on all of that. I think that was the main thing I wanted to say. And this is not just, resident complaints. I mean, Alistair will tell you, we work with landlords, we work with the businesses when they are having trouble getting the inspections. And Alistair was referring to the long time for these inspections. This process is expedited. I don't know how well it'll be expedited, but it is expedited from the normal process. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, we'll do the last 3 questions, Alistair, Andrea, and then Andrew. So Alistair, you're up.
Thanks. Sorry, quick question. This pertains a little, this maybe could be answered by Susan. Not sure. Is there, if DOB starts finding every single small business that's got a wire hanging out incorrectly because they didn't know any better, you're really going to have a shutdown of the businesses. They're struggling. They're having a really hard time, and that's just going to be the nail in the coffin. Is there a way to, instead of issuing them a monetary fine, to give them an initial warning, which I think there was a program like that for a while, where they have, it's, listen, if you don't correct this, if you don't get a permit, you will be fined. So at least it puts the business on notice, and then, they have to comply or fix the situation, or then they get fined. Because if we start finding them now, I think it's just going to be extremely difficult for them. So just give them a little bit of room to understand and again, these rules are just rolling out nonstop, and it's very difficult for them to understand them, to comply with them, especially the mom and pops.
So DOB doesn't issue fines. DOB gives a summons. It goes to Oath, which they are willing to also come and talk to the group, and Oath is really trying to work with businesses.
Andrea?
Thank you, Josh, for your presentation. Much appreciated. I just have a quick question. Well, 2 quick questions. I wasn't able to see the link that you sent because I got here a couple minutes late. So if you could just resend it, so I can just have reference to it. And then my second question was about just if I realized in order to get this permit, it's kind of done through the open restaurants program. I'm just wondering, would this be useful to, or is it even possible for like retail businesses or nonprofits who operate sidewalk spaces, courtyards, that sort of thing? Yeah, I was just wondering if they could go through the licensing this way.
As far as I know, it's for restaurants. What referred to as if they're going to expedite it. That's why we asked that they say it's for the open restaurants program. Otherwise, it's a separate request. For example, it's not going to go through the open restaurants program if it's not a restaurant itself, like a private retail space. They would probably have to go through the normal process of submitting a request and then submitting an inspection. I just sent the links into the chat, so you should see those as well. But if a retail space is trying to use the sidewalk, they would probably have to go through a separate permitting process away from open restaurants program. This is for restaurants specifically.
Andrew?
So the other thing that we're seeing is the use of spaces in the back of buildings, spaces that are not approved for eating or drinking or occupancy and are supposed to be for fire egress. And certainly they were never used before because restaurants couldn't get liquor licenses for them, but we're seeing people just plop tables and chairs and stuff back there. So is that allowable, or is that also they have to apply and get a certificate of occupancy to use the space and make sure that egress isn't blocked, et cetera?
I think we had this issue come up at the beginning when the earlier mayor's executive order had allowed restaurants to use outdoor spaces, where, you know, if they had them available, to use them to allow the restaurants to, you know, to open. Our code specifies that, you know, if it's a mixed-use building and we have a restaurant on the first floor and tenants on the second floor and above, that the rear yard is supposed to be used for the tenants. Now, unless otherwise specified by a certificate of occupancy or a letter of no objection from the department. As far as them using the rear space, I believe the mayor's executive order may have superseded that, but I need to double check. I don't want to let me follow up on that one, because I believe that we were allowing that the mayor's executive order allows them to use the rear yard space.
But if it's inhibiting, these are tenements where you're supposed to be able to come down the fire escape and use that as your
If
egress.
blocking fire escape or your egress or anything like that, we will go out and inspect and issue a violation for that. Now, they
They're
can't.
supposed to be places of refuge, right? They're supposed to be places you come down and then you stay safely, which you can't do if there's tables and chairs and structures and heaters and all that other stuff.
Right. Let me double check on that. Anything that's blocking egress, routes of egress, fire escapes, anything like that is not permitted. Doesn't matter if it's permitted or if we have these open restaurants or not. You can't block egress. You can't block safe routes. So anything like that, you let us know, report it, and we'll go out and inspect it. But I will double check on rear yard use. I have to confirm that if the mayor's executive order, if that's the guideline, that it's still permitted to use the rear yard, because I know they're allowing spaces. So, but I'll double check and follow up with Susan so she can reach out to you.
All right, cool. So those were all of the questions. We appreciate you coming to talk to us. And we will follow up with some of the questions that came up tonight.
Thank you. Of course. Anytime.
Cool. Thank you. So let's go ahead and move on. In the agenda, there are 3 resolutions. Maybe we should work on the economic development resolution. There are 2 arts and culture ones also, because that is most directly tied to this specific issue of weatherization. So Megan, if you want to bring up that resolution, that would be great. And I sent you the one Alex already had made some changes, so. And I'd also like to thank, Andrea helped draft this resolution and brought this sort of issue up to the committee. So thank you for proposing it.
Sorry, just give me 1 minute. Can you all see that now?
We can, but I sent in your email, Alec, I forwarded Alex's.
Oh, I thought that was it, sorry.
Comments.
Good evening.
It was the last email that you sent me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, sorry, I got it now.
Okay, cool.
Okay, we good?
Yes. So would it be helpful if I read it with the changes, or if there are any sort of changes off the bat that people have, feel free to raise your hand, but it's support for grants for small businesses to winterize outdoor spaces. Whereas small businesses make up a significant portion of the Manhattan CB3 economy, employ a large number of workers and immigrant workers, and remain vulnerable to a new wave of impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas Community Board 3 recognizes the recent efforts of the City Council and Mayor's Office to rescue small businesses and provide economic stimulus through the Open Restaurants and Open Storefronts program, and also by approving and providing guidance about outdoor heating to continue these programs through the winter. And whereas recognizing that in addition to restaurants and stores, local nonprofits and cultural institutions, many of whom operate outdoor spaces, also add to the economic, social, and cultural well-being of our community. And whereas federal relief for states, municipalities, and small businesses and workers are unlikely to become available in time to address the impact of winter weather, now therefore be it resolved that Community Board 3 supports measures by the city and city council, as well as by local associations to sustain small businesses and protect the public from the spread of COVID-19. And therefore be it resolved that Community Board 3 requests that Small Business Services, SBS, optimize the PPE plus reopening supplies marketplace to include outdoor heating devices such as propane, electrical, and solar devices, and support grants for such supplies. Olympia.
So is there a reason for which you want to limit the grants only to weatherization? What if they want to upgrade the structural quality of these things that fly in the wind? I would extend the grant to, you know, the structural and weatherization improvements of these temporary facilities, pavilions, whatever you call them.
Yeah, I think that is there a specific language that you would like to include?
It's the first time I see the reso, but I can say, therefore, be it resolved that Community Board 3 requests that Small Business Services, SBS, optimize the PPE reopening to include outdoor heating devices such as propane, electric, and
weatherization materials,
or we could say, and support grants for such supplies, as well as for structural upgrades to the pavilion. Do you call them pavilions? Do they have a name of these things? As well as structural upgrades to the temporary structures, curb structures, temporary curb structures, you can call them.
Okay. Maybe outdoor dining areas? No.
I think the temporary curb structures is good.
Temporary curb structures.
So this way they can use it for whatever makes more sense for them.
Yeah, I think that is a good point.
Maybe just get rid of the first structural as well as upgrade temporary curb structure.
Yeah, or upgrade this. Basically, by structural, we want to say this solidity. What do we call it? Like the sound, the quality, firmness.
Why limit it to that? Why not just say and support grants for such supplies as well as the construction of temporary curb structures? So
but just put a qualifier like of high quality, you know, or like something like that, you know, like structurally sound, because these things are unsound, what is out there right now.
And support grants. I know you're trying to say, Olympia, like to increase the structural vitality, or what's the word?
Like safety is what you're.
Integrity.
Integrity. That's a good word. Who said that?
Andrea.
Okay. Support grants for supplies as well as.
How did you say it, Andrew? We could use.
Well, my point is that I think Clint put stability and safety. This isn't just about fixing existing structures and making them safer, because somebody may not have even built the structure yet. It's about allowing the grants to be built, to use, to be
Yeah.
to build safe, what did Clint say?
Stability and safety.
To build safe and stable temporary
Curb structure sounds perfect. As well
as to construct safe
and
and
stable
temporary curb structures.
Perfect. Thank you.
Olympia, I'll probably add in there as well to construct and maintain safe.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions about this?
Yeah, I have a comment. I'm not opposed to the last whereas clause, the second to last one about local nonprofits and cultural institutions, but it's kind of like a non sequitur in the middle of the resolution. So I feel like there has to be something to link it to the therefore clauses, like why we're mentioning it.
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, I'm with you, but kind of what's happened recently is this the use of the street space has been extended to not just restaurants, but now to storefronts of all types, and also to, nonprofits, or, it's whatever you want, you could put out there now. You want to, sell shirts out there, you could sell shirts out there.
Well, I guess that's sort of covered in the open storefronts in the whereas above. That these grants or support or whatever is applicable to like anything in either of these programs, I suppose.
It's not clear though.
Yeah.
That's why it just looks like it doesn't fit into the rest of the resolution. It could. It just doesn't look like it's attached to anything in particular.
I mean, I think what Anissa is saying is that because the open storefronts applies to everything else, that's how
Correct.
it is connected. What would you like, Alex, to make the connection more clearer? Would you like us to repeat that the open storefronts extends the privileges that currently are for outdoor dining to different kind of entities?
Maybe we can add something that's like, whereas like CB3 has a plethora of these, because I think you're right, Alex. I see it kind of comes out of left field. It's like, oh, why are we talking about local nonprofits and cultural institutions all of a sudden? Maybe you could say, because CB3 has such a concentration of local nonprofits and cultural institutions, kind of we want to pay extra attention to them.
Well, that's a separate idea, but that's also a good idea.
The other resolution.
Okay. I suppose you could just write at the end in the therefore be it resolved or further resolved. Small business service optimized. For all small businesses, including restaurants, retail stores, local nonprofits, as well as cultural institutions.
Restaurants, retail stores, and what else?
As well as local nonprofits and cultural institutions. Right, because that's really what you want. You want continued support for or support for all of them.
Yeah.
That's the reason for including it.
Yeah, that's a really
Are there any other further comments? I can read it one more time if people would like, or
Charles brought up a point in the chat as to whether these grants would be retroactive. I mean, I don't know if that's something we should discuss, but I think it's reasonable to just ask just add a clause about perhaps them being retroactive and like on a reimbursement basis. That might work.
I've heard from the city that, or I feel like, through different Zooms, I've heard this, that yes, we're going to be allowed to do these things continually, but that the rules and the regulations around them are going to change. So like, don't go spending a fortune on what you're putting up this winter, because very likely the regulations are going to change come springtime again. So, which is, I think, why some of these things are looking pretty flimsy. So I guess my point is, even if we can't get reimbursed for what we've already spent on the outdoor dining, there's certainly going to be more money that we have to spend in the future.
That also
So
brings.
I think the maintain safe and stable temporary curb structures might answer the question, because that leaves open, hey, I built this structure, but I need to fix it, et cetera, or I need to stabilize it some more. And the money would be allowed to do that. It's not going to pay for that first piece of plywood you bought, but it might pay for the 5th piece of plywood to make sure your structure doesn't fall over. So I think the therefore be it resolved that we put in would allow businesses to apply in some ways to solidify their structures, et cetera. It might not pay for what they already built, but it would certainly pay to make what they built safer and yeah.
All right. Any other comments or questions on this one? Cool. Do we want to approve this now, or do you want to approve them all at the end? Any preferences?
Let's go with now. Motion to approve. Sorry.
I'll second that.
Yeah, okay.
So someone should say all those in favor, right? Or are you going to do a roll call?
Roll call, sorry guys.
Okay.
Too many devices open. Anisha Stephen?
Yes.
Megan Joy, yes. Alistair Economakis?
Yes.
Andrea Gordillo?
Yes.
Herman Hewitt? Not here. David Louie?
Yes.
Alexandra Militano?
Yes.
Richard Ropiak? Not here. Rodney Washington? Not here. And Andrew Comey?
Yes.
And Joe Kearns is not here, right?
Yeah, he's not here.
Okay.
Cool. Let's move on to the arts and culture ones. And I know Olympia has to leave fairly soon. So I don't remember which one is first, but let's do.
I think the first one is going to be easy. I don't expect anybody to have questions. It's the second, and you told me people had some questions.
Yeah.
But I think Caroline is here, but I don't see her anymore. Oh no, she's here.
Oh, Caroline's still here.
Yeah.
Megan, do you want to pull those up?
Sorry guys, I have to leave because of my kids.
Can you guys see those now?
It's still the old ones.
That's the old one.
You might want to stop sharing the screen and then share it again. Or it's the economic development one.
Oh, it was? Okay, sorry. Okay. Okay.
Okay. So there are two resolutions, Carolyn, from Carolyn and her committee. So Carolyn, would you like to discuss them?
Yes. Okay, resolution to request city agencies, including DCLA, DOT, DYCD, DSNY, DOE, and parks to increase funding opportunities in the current budget for artists and arts organizations. Whereas arts and culture sector has experienced extensive damage from the pause program enacted by New York State as a necessary response to COVID-19. And whereas approximately 70% of the arts community has had their funding cut, according to Senator Jose Serrano, who chairs the Cultural Committee in the Assembly. Whereas many gig economy artists and cultural producers had no income since March and weren't able to access unemployment benefits for months. And whereas the prospects of new commissions and projects are non-existent since theaters, venues, and all live performance initiatives are indefinitely shuttered. And whereas the economic hit that arts and cultural sector is receiving will last 3 to 5 years, depending on sector specificities. And whereas artists and cultural workers are the creative capital of New York and are integral to the creative industry capital that fueled New York's tourism and export economy for years. Therefore, in order to assuage the damage to the visual and performing arts industry, we request that the city create WPA-style programs to employ artists and cultural workers for the next 3 to 5 years as the impacted arts and cultural industries rebounds.
So Caroline, I just raised my hand because I think the title should be more similar to the therefore. I think otherwise general grants can be confusing because we're talking for something very specific. And also I would add, we somehow in the back and forth, maybe it go away, the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment should be along with DCLA and the other agencies.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you just said, Olivia, at the end.
So there is one agency to add, MOM, and then I was saying that the title of the reso is more generic than the actual therefore, and I think it should reflect, instead of general funding opportunities, use, launching a WPA-style employment program.
You want to use that in the title?
Yes, because otherwise they don't correspond, right? It's two very different things. Sorry, I thought we're not going to discuss this, Teresa, but then I create discussion. Sorry.
You want to?
Right, so I'm proposing to request that the city initiate a WPA-style program, as well as have city agencies, including to increase funding opportunities.
That sounds good.
Go ahead, Carolyn, one more time.
To request New York City to institute a WPA-style program. To employ artists.
Sorry.
And I have a question for Susan and other experienced members. Can we direct it to New York City and state? Because I actually know that there are 3 senators right now in New York State that are spearheading an initiative at the state level. Can we direct it to both New York City and New York State?
What I would do is Ordinarily, I would do them separately, but well, it's different agencies. So I wouldn't, because this is directed to specific city agencies that don't correspond. So I would do maybe a very similar one to your state legislators.
Great.
Okay.
Am I erasing the original title?
Not totally, because we still want them to include, and to request city agents, get rid of resolution in front of to request city agencies, and just have request city agencies, including those agencies. No, you don't want to get rid of the request, just resolution too. And to request.
And I think Olympia wanted to include MOAM in that list.
All right.
OME. Alistair, you have your hand up.
Sure, thanks. I have a few questions on this. One, the second whereas, I'm just curious what the reason was that they couldn't access unemployment benefits for months. On the fifth whereas, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, how do we know that this is going to last 3 to 5 years? We're kind of in uncharted territory, so I'm not sure how that number came about. And then on the last whereas, can we track the language there that we used in the district needs statement? Because I know we discussed export economy and creative industry capital. I mean, I think we came up with some better terminology that we could track from the district needs statement. Those are my 3 questions.
To be honest, in my opinion, the last whereas could also just go away. We don't need it. I'm not so insecure that we need that. But, I defer to the other people here. I don't think it's important. To the question that you made about, so there are, the reason people didn't qualify, I mean, I don't know if you, Caroline, wanted to take the question, but the reason for which people didn't qualify about unemployment benefits is because there is a huge problem when you were a 1099 worker to figure out how to qualify. And many of them were also cash economy workers and they never qualified. Not to mention if you are a dreamer, you didn't qualify. And
okay, so should we change it then? We're not able to qualify for unemployment benefits, because the way it reads now, it sounds they had access to unemployment benefits, but it took them months to get them.
Because both of these instances happened. So basically, it has been both of these things. I mean, to be honest, it has been really horrible. Plus, those who did eventually access them, the enhanced unemployment benefits, as you probably already know, expired in July. And like artists got as little as $19 a week. Like if you don't have the extra 600 weekly, you can't pay anything because of the way the 1099 thing works. And so, so the reality is that the people are facing destitution, and the majority of them have left already the city. Like a lot of them are,
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
We've empty apartments everywhere. I know everybody's left.
You want to change it and approve that?
So, whereas many gig economy artists,
yeah, great,
producers,
right. Yeah. Fine,
perfect.
Unable to access unemployment or did not qualify. Do you want to say did not or did not qualify for them for money? It's fine.
Yeah. And Caroline, are you okay if we take out the last whereas, because we don't need it? I mean, I think our case is strong enough without that part.
I don't know. I mean, that was originally your input. So
okay.
If you want to take it out, then do so.
Well, my only thing is, didn't we just rename the resolution to match that last therefore?
Yes.
So, I
But
mean,
it's whereas above it.
It's
The
the whereas
what?
above it that we're talking, because Alistair said, you know, that export economy was weird, that sentence.
Right, no, I know, they dealt with that at the last meeting with the district need statement.
Yeah.
Right. I was just going to say, if you have it in there, just track the language in the district needs statement, one or the other, because I think we created slightly better language. And then, sorry, Olympia or Carolyn, why is it 3 to 5 years? Like, how do we know
So
it's not 10? And how do we know it's not 2? It's
no, I mean, the thing is, it's the you can take it out and say it's going to be long term, but there are studies both for the Americans for the Arts, Brookings Institution, and locally from the Center for Urban Future, because the, you know, the hit that the industry has taken, it is so radical. I mean, a lot of them have completely gone out of business. Those who that,
Strengthen those studies then, so then we,
yeah.
yeah, we should cite them because it's just coming
Yeah.
up number 3 to 5.
But I think what we could say, just to, you know, finish relatively quickly, I would say we know this is going to be long-term impact.
Yeah.
It's going to take a lot, you know, it's going to take a long time to recover it, because even if it reopens, it's not going to be day one. Every, you know, tiny venue and theater will be able to have a full blown and deploy everybody back.
Yeah, and honestly, it could be longer than 5 years.
Yeah,
you know?
so we can say long-term impact. But the studies that they've done so far that I had read, they had those ranges, you know.
Right.
no, I believe them totally.
No, I believe it, but then we should either cite the studies
Yeah.
or just mention long-term. That's all. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Are there any other final sort of comments on this? And then I guess we'll take out that last whereas is sort of where we are. Okay.
I have it crossed out, I'll just take it out, right? Okay,
Okay. We can vote on these two together, maybe. Let's go, since Olympia has to go, let's go on to the next one. It might just be in that document.
I don't think it was. Let me just pull, that's, I think I might only have one of them.
Oh, did I not put both in?
I don't think so. Let me look one more time.
Sorry. As Megan's looking, can someone just mention or just discuss what the outdoor, I'm all for the outdoor performances, but I'm just worried about the community coming back and saying things are too noisy at night and I know nothing about it. Can you, what kind of outdoor performances, where are the time constraints? You know, does this mean restaurants will have bands? Playing?
Are you asking what is the legislation by Council Member Jimmy Van Breggen?
Yeah, just a little, I have no idea what it is.
I put you the number of the legislation in the chat, and I will try to find the actual language from the register. Here it is. I attached the legislation. I pasted the legislation.
Okay, Carolyn or Olympia, do one of you
I
want to
think
talk about
that
this?
one, the city is still going to hold outdoor performances to the same guidelines that it has about noise that it presently has at this point in time. There would have to be a permit applied for. I can't see them totally relaxing that. And I think that most cultural institutions would be sensitive to the fact that they would be very grateful that they were able to perform in outdoor spaces, and that they would not want to create a thing that would totally annoy their neighbors to the point that they would be filing complaints, which people do about the noise quite frequently. You know, it depends on the type and quality of the performance. Acoustic music is less annoying than amplified sound, usually. there are different ways that performers can produce something that is not as intrusive, but is still effective. So I don't see how, you know, if they're following the same guidelines that we've always had about sound, then they're going to have to stick to that. I don't think the
Susan,
city is, you know, not relaxing those guidelines.
Susan has her hand raised.
Do you want me at this point to talk about how the office has been involved in this issue?
Sure.
Okay, so I have mentioned, I think at the last 2 community board meetings and exec meetings, that the biggest complaints that we are getting right now is about particularly music with the associated with the outdoor dining. It is not always with the businesses. There's a lot of roving bands. So incidental music that is not amplified is already allowed. It wasn't in the beginning, but restaurants are now allowed to have, like say, this incidental music that's not amplified. So the issue is a permit for amplified music. None of that is being enforced right now. There are constant both roving bands and bands associated with restaurants and just speakers. And it's I agree with Carolyn. If people, you know, were careful about it, it wouldn't be an issue. But unfortunately, that's not what's happening. And there are I'm just gonna say constant complaints that we cannot get enforced. The police are not enforcing. There's basically very little enforcement around open restaurants because everybody, all the agencies are being very, very sensitive to businesses being fined and going out of business. So it's created this kind of very strange situation. But I just want to report, and I think there are people here that probably want to speak to it, but the office's experience and other community boards, this comes up at Borough Service Cabinet meeting and many meetings on how to deal with this issue because it's unfortunately already an issue.
Right. It's just the experience that I've had in dealing with outdoor performances in the past, particularly in La Plaza with the Performance Festival. Even, you know, if you're a nonprofit, you're generally sensitive about getting tickets and also about your neighbors calling in complaints. Community board, to the precinct, to various and sundry other city agencies. And I think that there's a difference between arts organizations, performing arts organizations, producing events, and that it would grant them some sort of think, you know, that they would be cognizant of their neighbors and the fact that neighbors will file complaints if they feel like it's out of hand, which
So
they do.
There's 2 issues here. Legally, they're not going to do one thing for arts organization. If they have a permit, it's a permit people can apply for.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and there already are complaints. I mean, you complained to me a few weeks ago about it illegal. It was illegal, but it was not enforced, and the police wouldn't enforce it. And
Right.
that
Police also told me that they had a permit.
they didn't have a permit, though. They were lying.
No, I know, but obviously they had a friend somewhere.
They did not have a permit. So what I'm saying is, unfortunately, that you've been aware of the situation too, because we worked on it together. Unfortunately, this is what the situation is. I agree with you. I wish it were different, but this is what is existing now. I think if there were real parameters that really were enforced, it might be a very different situation. But this is unfortunately what's existing now.
Yeah, I think that, you know, there could be parameters put in place in terms of timeframes that people are allowed to do it. That it's, you know, the restrictions on amplified sound, and how that's thought about. So, I mean, performing arts needs a place to be able to perform. And, FAB is coming up with a thing on November the 14th, where the performing arts organizations on 4th Street and other members of FAB are applying to produce events that would be outdoors or be able to be seen from the street. Because they
Caroline, I see there are 3 people who have questions.
Hands.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear all the 3 people questions, and then maybe we can address everything together, because I really need to go. Thank you.
So
Yeah,
let's
okay, fine.
Andrew, then Alex, then Clint. Andrew.
Yeah, so I would be uncomfortable supporting a blanket resolution to allow amplified sound. I mean, we've had all kinds of problems with the park and things happening, random parties, clubs, musical performances in the park through all hours of the night. If these were permitted, regulated, a legitimate arts organization wanting to do something on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday afternoon or something like that, it makes sense to me. But just supporting something that allows amplified sound, that unfortunately I wouldn't be in support of that based on what's been happening around the neighborhood right now.
Alex.
I agree with Andrew. I agree with Susan. It's it's an existing problem, and a lot of it is left to like the community board office to struggle with and try to work with the other agencies to address. And I think that if we wanted to support something like this, we should really create guidelines for how it would work, like how we think it should work, rather than doing what Andrew was said he was opposed to, which is sort of just a generalized support for outdoor music. As it is now, there are, you do have to, if you're going to follow the law, you do have to get a permit. And there are specified hours that you can play, but exactly what Susan said is happening, which is that businesses are either allowing musicians in who are amplifying their sound or playing a cappella, but are playing, some of them are coming with pianos, which we've seen, right? They may be roving musicians, they may be outdoors doing it, but they may also be just going from business to business. And then businesses are also employing them, which is great that they're trying to employ people in the arts communities, but it's creating a whole host of complaints regarding noise, because they're not employing them to stand in the back of their business and let this, the sound travel out to the outdoor seating in the front. They're employing them so that they're standing basically on the edge of the open storefront on the sidewalk with their musical instruments and the amplification. So it's all basically outdoors if it's not actually outdoors. So we just have to think this through in a way that to establish whether or not we can support it, and support it with specific asks. But I am very much in support of trying to get this, the arts community are really struggling to try to help them, revitalize their professions, because they have really, I felt fallen by the wayside in this whole pandemic in terms of support and assistance.
I agree.
Okay. I'd like to make a comment. I think one.
Caroline, let's just hear also from Clint. He was in line, and then we can answer to everybody together. Sounds good?
Yeah, we'll do Clint. And then one of the things I would also ask is, in the legislation, are there parameters that Jimmy Van Bramer has?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a little bit of misinformation here about this resolution, but that's why I wanted to hear from everybody and then answer to everybody's concern together. Because the reason you see all these illegal things is because there is no legal way of doing it. And so as long as they have bans, like there is a legal ban on any kind of ticketed performance, then you're going to be harassed by those people who are exploiting poor artists who are going to do it for pennies because it's illegal, and they're going to not respect any rules of safety, even the safety of the artist, right? Because our concern is also about artists putting themselves in harm's way in order to make a buck in a gig, because the gigs that pay are not allowed anymore. And so right now what is happening is completely, unethical, because they have single-handedly taken outdoor performance out from the equation for the past summer, a moment that every European city had outdoor performance safely done. So I think what these legislations are going to ultimately do is address your concerns, because they will have to have a framework, they will have to have guidelines, etc. Now, the issue of enforcement, I think, is a bigger issue, as we heard also earlier with DOB. However, I think Caroline's point about the fact that these are going to be lifelines for important local nonprofit cultural organizations, theaters, venues, etc. These are not, speculative outsiders. These are people that make our community and are right now denied an opportunity to pay. Even they're not going to make any money, but at least to put up a performance and pay out of the tickets these artists that they are part of.
Olympia, I don't think anybody's disagreeing with that. I'm certainly not. But if we want something, and I don't think we have the time to do it tonight, we should really, as Alex said, lay this all out and specify what we're in support of. Because what this resolution does, it basically creates a free-for-all and allows anybody to do kind of whatever they want. And
I'm not sure.
Excuse me. I think that first and foremost, you just stated that you wanted Clint to be able to speak. Okay, and that's been totally overlooked.
Yeah.
So let's let Clint speak.
Yes, I think that would be appreciated.
No, I just had a quick clarification, and maybe Susan can answer this as well. I know, Susan, it has changed to allow music incidental to the operation. Does that include live music, live performances? Would that be, a staged, like a small play or something like that? Or is it just music piped through speakers? What is the clarification of that, what's currently allowed?
Okay, so speakers are amplified, so that's not allowed.
Okay.
If a business like some of ours, I'm thinking of one on St. Mark's, if a business as a method of their operation has live music, they are allowed to have live music. It's at, background level, and it's not amplified. But if I could just say, I think what Olympia and Carolyn are saying is that there's a lot of misinformation. And I think we are all, I think it's not, the reso isn't specific, because I want to say historically, we do not have complaints about like block parties, like Theater for the New City or 4th Street Arts Block. When they have block parties and they have performances, we do not have complaints about those kinds of things. What we're talking about is the stuff that is all over the sidewalks.
And what the other thing that I had wanted to say is the way the discussion has been going is if the only type of performance you're considering are musicians, okay? And I think that what it applies to is also acting, performances, plays, poetry that could be done. I mean, that's basically my understanding of what 4th Street's Arts Block is planning on the 14th. It's not just having bands up and down the street or in restaurants. So it's like there are a variety of things that need to be considered, and I'm all for having guidelines included in it, because I have dealt with my neighbors for many years in regards to sound and how they feel about it when it's intrusive, and it's not pleasant to have to listen to something that you don't want to listen to. So I think that yeah, it's a good idea to have some guidelines in the resolution.
So there are two hands
Sorry,
raised.
can I also give a context, guys? The legislation says the term affected art and cultural institution means any not-for-profit art or cultural group, organization, venue, or institution within the city of New York that was ordered to close due to the state disaster emergency declared by the governor, etc. I mean, this is really like, we are not going to set the parameters for that. You know what I mean? This is about like all the independent league of theater, like there are a lot of them in our district. There are a lot of other kind of performances, dance, etc. that right now they're, to be honest, like they can sue the city because of course the nightlife industry, the restaurants have lobbies and they lobbied the hell out of the government and they got the open restaurants and the arts and culture got nothing. And so this is a timid attempt to give a lifeline to this industry from the chair of the Arts and Culture Committee. This is not, you know, some whatever harassing drug addict or alcoholic who wants to come and disturb people. I mean, I think I understand your perspective because you're people who deal with these kind of issues in this district, but I also would like to make sure that you read the legislation and you understand the context from which it's coming, because I think the criticism that you are levying is to some extent unfair and also, you know, unrelated, because the concerns that you have are occurring also because there is this basically more and more people, especially if you're talking about musicians, are pushed to underground, unsafe situations, and you know, loud situations or whatever, because these are illegal gigs that they're offered. They have no legal gigs.
Olympia, let's let the two folks from the public speak, Dale, and then Maria.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm going to speak as a resident who's having, you know, a lot of noise issues with things on the street that now been opened up, and as a former performance artist, musician, poetry, street stuff, all that. So I certainly, you know, understand that need and desire, and then the loss of performance spaces. But what for me is a big concern, because I also face Avenue A between 12th and 13th, and there is 5, 6 venues, restaurants and that open right now. And just the constant noise just from dinner, people talking, and more of the spaces putting outdoor speakers out there, what they call low background music. And as Carolyn said, all of a sudden there's noise where there isn't noise. And if you're a resident and across from any of this stuff, it really starts to, deplete quality of life. And the whole idea that trying to save all these businesses by putting whatever element that, of their business is out on the street is really, I mean, I feel trapped by everybody's desire to survive. And I don't want things to go under because of this, but the more we keep trying to solve issues by putting it on the street for residents who are, facing the street and have this already going on, it's really kind of like I said, trapped. It feels like a terrible burden. All of a sudden, you people are directly involved. You have to put up with it for the sake of business survival. Is really a tough pill to swallow. And, because even if it's acoustic music, there's a Dixieland or some kind of Bourbon Street trio that comes up and down, and they've got a drummer and a couple horns and a singer, and those guys, it just, on Avenue A, it just blasts. And they'll go up and down to the various venues for, half hour, 45 minutes, an hour, and you hear it until they are finally out of earshot. And, the music is fun and great, but not when you're living with all the noise all around the clock now, with everything being open. And in terms of other types of performance, theater, other types of spoken word, acoustic performance, whatever, it is noise on the street, and it's all subjective as to what is background, what's right in somebody's face. So I think it's an unfortunate thing to kind of pit residents against all these different elements in terms of survival, because quality of life is about surviving too. I wish they could put up some temporary structure in the park that was soundproof. Performances could go on in there or something like that. But the more it's just on the streets, it's really fatiguing and a burden for me as a resident, me as a former performer, and all of that. So that would be my comment to this: is how much burden can streets and neighbors who are facing the streets, how much weight of that can be sustained at some point. There's a breaking point, and for me, it's kind of already happening just with what's out there already.
Thank you. Maria?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dale. That was great. It feels wonderful to hear someone articulate what I've been living. I think we're talking about two different things here, because one is about supporting artists and the other thing is about kind of living in a kind of chaos where you don't know when something's going to start blasting and you don't know how long it's going to go on. And I've lived in the East Village on my street. I live on 3rd Street near Avenue B for 30 years. So I've dealt with, nightclubs. I've run the gamut, and, complaining about noise, working with, within the community with nightclubs, having the EPA come in and measure the decibels. This is really out of control because the police don't respond. The EPA doesn't come. And we're not talking about live bands, we're talking about amplified music, DJs blasting their music, people coming in to the neighborhood, really drunk or whatever. And I wrote in my email to you guys that they even started setting up a porta potty in front of the community garden. So yeah, talk about quality of life. We're already in a pandemic, and this feels like an epidemic of sound where I don't know where I get to just enjoy the quiet of my home. So I feel kind of imprisoned here. So I appreciate the idea of supporting artists, but this is not about supporting artists, the amplified music. This is real imposition. So just looking at your language, not that I'm kind of jumping in the middle of this, but to not specify who this is supporting and to know that there's going to be a beginning and an end, and that it's going to be at a certain decibel level is crazy making for the residents.
I mean, we're not dismantling existing legislation, right? There is already a regime of legislation about what, the decibels, etc. I'm not understanding the perspective and the framework. Like, had you had a chance to read the legislation? Have you had a chance to understand what we're talking about? Especially for someone who comes from a background of performing arts, you understand that currently there is a ban, a complete ban on outdoor performance. And that's why there are illegal things only happening. So you need to lift the ban, and this way the existing framework of legislation by established organizations can be, happening.
Are you saying that by lifting the ban that then actually the ordinances that are supposed to be in place will then be enacted in terms of the illegal noise? Because I'm not confident about that. What's happening now is—
What I'm saying is this legislation that the CB3 is doing a resolution to support are legislations that have been established with organizations that we know, local nonprofits, theaters, all sorts of different places that right now, they cannot legally have outdoor performances. And a crazy bar near you, I don't know what they're doing legally or illegally, but obviously are disturbing you. But if you had a theater, or if you had, any other arts and cultural institution, they cannot do anything because of the lack of any legal way to do that. So what we're saying, we need to have a legal way for these kind of organizations to create their program not just, and by the way, this is not just a business perspective, this is also a mental health perspective, you know.
Yeah, so we're, clearly we're talking about two different things here. I wrote an email today and I was invited to come and speak. So, I'll put that out there. We're talking about two different things. So I'm not arguing about artists, but I'm having the opportunity to talk to the community board and,
So let's focus on the resolution and if we want to change anything in the resolution or how we want to approach this, because there seem to be, a number of different opinions. I do think that there is a little bit of like cross communication with the intent of what this is supposed to be, because from my perspective, and I saw this resolution when everybody else did, is that it's really to figure out a way for cultural organizations, I would say, probably not like your individual artist, to have a way to do something during this time if their venues are closed. I don't know that that's fully clear from the resolution. I don't know if we can figure this out tonight, or if the Arts and Culture Subcommittee should work on maybe some clarifications. And
so Anissa, I think that if anybody has read the Intro 2068 that I also put a link in the chat, we had very specific, description of the arts and cultural institutions. And regarding the amendment that I think Megan may have typed, I think we can add that if people feel comfortable, like need that to make sure that it is by established arts organizations. But I really don't see any reason to delay that, because it is very, very much, concise. I mean, Jimmy Van Braber is the chair of the Arts and Cultural Committee of the New York City Council. And this legislation has been designed in collaboration with the local institutions that need them.
Even when the full board's if we pass this tonight, the full board's gonna have to vote on it. And from this resolution as it's written, it's not clear what's in his proposed legislation. And I think that's the problem. So just reading this resolution, you don't know what's in his legislation. So you can't assume.
So what we say to facilitate outdoor performance for arts events and performances, we can say by established arts organization, if that helps.
Right, but that's not my point. My point is, you're asking everybody, having you read this proposed legislation, whether we have or we've not on this committee, we're certainly not assuming that the full board is going to have read it before they vote on this resolution. So I think the resolution needs to say a little bit more about what's in the legislation.
I mean, we can try to write a few lines of an abstract. However, usually the business of the CB3 is that we rely on the expertise of the various committees. For instance, when I do a ULERP, I'm pretty sure none of the other people have read the ULERP that I read about Rikers or about Two Bridges, etc. But they rely on me when I say that document 10-22 said X, and so Community Board 3 recommends Y. However, these are a few of the extra conversations that need to happen around arts and culture in CB3, because it's always a subcommittee under committees that obviously don't deal every day with.
So what are the major points in his legislation that you think are missing from this resolution? That's
basically we can articulate that currently there is no legal way whatsoever for arts and cultural organizations to host outdoor events.
Andrew, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I have to leave soon. And I feel as though if, like we had the last presentation, et cetera, if there was a presentation of what this legislation is, so we could all understand it, et cetera, I would be prepared to vote on this. I feel ill prepared to vote on this resolution tonight. And I don't want to vote on something that I don't understand and that can have an impact, a negative impact on the people in the neighborhood. So that's unfortunate, but that's where I am. If there was a much more thorough presentation of this, Perhaps I
But
could.
sorry,
feel
so
comfortable.
I think then we should just merge the Arts and Culture Committee and the Economic Development Committee, because we cannot attend 8 meetings and try to present to 8 different people. Because after Andrew will make a presentation for you, then we have to go to full board, and then other people may raise other questions.
No, I'm not suggesting that. Olympia, I think just like we had the guy from DOB come and explain this whole thing about outdoor heating, et cetera, we were able to ask questions, and then we approved a resolution for a grant to support businesses to allow them to better function in that environment. All we have here is a resolution with really no background information. And I would think you would want, I would hope you would want my support on this. And what I'm saying is, as it stands now, at this hour, with no detail, if you called this to a vote, I would have to vote against it. And I don't want to do that, but I don't have anything I need right now to support a resolution.
Carolyn, you have your hand up.
Yes, I do. You know, there's a way, I think, of drafting either another whereas clause in the resolution to maybe address some of these issues. Because the thing about it is that when I read this, and we developed this, I was thinking in terms of performing arts organizations like the theaters that have been closed. Okay, and what the discussion seemed to gear towards, at least in the earlier part of this resolution, was more as if it applied to street musicians. And so at any rate, I think, you know, I would go along with Andrew's suggestion that there be a presentation about Jimmy Van Bramer's legislation that is being put forward so that everyone has a clear understanding of it and what we're getting into. That I ran a performance festival from 1996 to 2003, and I lived with my neighbors. We had one performance organization who went on until 11 o'clock, sometimes midnight. One of my neighbors called me. It sounded as if it was in his living room. He was ready to kill me. Okay, we tried dealing with that particular group. They were very obnoxious. They were rude to the neighbors. Okay, there do need to be guidelines in place about, because we and the other neighbors who lived along this block, because with La Plaza, the amphitheater amplifies the sound. It sends it all the way up all the backyards. Okay, it sent it all the way up to the 6th floor of the buildings across the street. So there do need to be guidelines in place about hours. Most of the time, people don't object to performances in the afternoon. What they do object to is if they have to listen to it late at night and for the length of time that they have to listen to it. So I don't think that those are unreasonable ideas to put into the resolution.
So if you would like, Carolyn, if you could coordinate some sort of speaker presentation to come and give more background about this, then it would have to be in December.
No,
Right.
but I think, Anissa, what Carolyn suggested to Andrew's comment is to add a sentence where it says that if the outdoor performance, is subjected to to certain times of the day, etc. Because guys, like, it doesn't make sense for us to have a resolution for December. Like, you meet before us, then we need to meet as Arts and Culture. Also, it wouldn't make a sense to have a presentation for these people to the Economic Development Committee. If you care so much about Arts and Culture Subcommittee, you should attend our meeting. You know what I mean? Like, even I'm asked constantly to come and attend the Economic Development Committee by people, and I don't want to. I mean, you're lovely and everything, but I can't attend 8,000 committee meetings. So if this is an issue that you care deeply about, why don't you join our meeting and you can hear all the conversation that you want about the subject of this legislation that is proposed by the Arts and Culture.
Back if this is something that you want us to vote yes on, then why don't you provide us the
Exactly.
more background information on, look.
Yeah, but how do you want it provided beyond?
I think what we said, and I thought I just heard Carolyn agree to, is have somebody present this executive or what Van Bramer's proposed legislation is, so we can understand it.
Okay, so
And then we can craft a resolution that
Okay.
says CB3
So
supports.
I want to make a point of order here, because I don't have anybody presenting me the 500 pages of a ULURP when I do my ULURP at the landing use.
So
And
Olympia, you can just
let
keep
me-
arguing with
no,
us, and
let me-
that's not going to get
guys,
you a vote.
I don't care about the vote, but I do care about point of order, and I'm happy that Susan is here, because this was a resolution that was passed last month, and it had a reference to a specific legislation that is available to anybody who cares about this issue to read, because it's a public domain document. And I already posted earlier today here in this chat. I understand that you didn't have a chance of reading it, but this is not my responsibility, right? You serve in this committee. You knew this was a resolution that was coming in front of your committee. The reference to the legislation was there. If you couldn't find it, you could have asked the Office for Assistance or our subcommittee, and we would have provided you the link that I already put in the chat. So I am happy for us to, since we are a subcommittee of this committee, to add a comment that you may want to suggest in terms of, ours and making sure that it conforms with current legislative framework about environmental, how much the decibel is, etc. However, this feels like you guys have a specific issue that you deal with about noise that has to do with a very specific nightlife concern. And this legislation comes from a very different perspective that I hope by now you understand that there is currently a legal complete ban. There is no legal way for arts and culture organizations to have an outdoor performance. And so I think we're talking about two very different issues, and beyond offering, like at the subcommittee level, we discussed it. The legislation is there, is in the public domain, is a document that was referred in a reso that you received before you had your committee meeting. So this is a point of order for me, just because otherwise we shouldn't be having subcommittee meetings if we're going to be having the whole conversation again.
Well, that is something that can be brought up with Alicia. I think the committee as a whole does not feel like they have enough information to.
But Anissa, that's what I'm saying. They did have, but Susan has her hand up.
Oh, Susan, sorry.
Yeah, so I would like to speak to the point of order. It's a technical thing, and I think it's an important technical point because I think it's causing the problem. So if you go into how to write a resolution, and this is based on previous problems, every resolution is supposed to be able to stand alone. So you can't depend on reading the other document to understand the resolution. The resolution has to stand alone. So clearly you're not going to repeat the whole intro, but it has to give the important points, because what people, and I understand the frustration, people are reacting not to what the legislation says, they're reacting to what this resolution says. And you need to have the whole point be able to stand alone and be understandable in the resolution. That's part of our guidelines based on this kind of issue happening in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Like even in a ULURP resolution, you can read the resolution and get the gist of what they're requesting from the ULURP. Is there any language that we could add now, Olympia, that would give you a better sort of idea of what this legislation is asking for? Like, is there anything in the legislation that requests sort of like time limits or decibel levels or?
I mean, that's what I'm saying. This is where you're losing me, is that this legislation doesn't say to take away the current regime. There is a legislative regime around these kind of things, right? But there is no way of having right now outdoor performance. This is the first sentence from the summary of the legislation. It says this bill would require the city to create an open culture program that would allow art and cultural institutions affected by COVID-19 to use parks, pedestrian plazas, roadways, or public parking areas and other approved open spaces as temporary performance and rehearsal space. Because right now they cannot perform anywhere. There is a ban. So
No,
all the illegal people can go out and do things and disturb all of us. Like, do you want to talk about the, Dave or Dale? What was the name of that guy? I live near Tompkins Square Park. You won't believe what are the illegal noisy things that are happening here. But there is nothing legal and nobody is paid. And those are the things.
This isn't just lifting the restrictions. This is also allowing, there was legal ways to perform outdoors before, but this is going beyond that and saying to do outdoor performance and practice spaces. Am I right?
Yeah, but I think the concern that the residents raised was this is going to be noisy or things like that, right? And the thing is that, as Susan was saying earlier, when FAB or the Theater for the New City or other local organizations have done events in the past, these were not the kind of events that disturb people because they do respect the decibel, etc. It's a different kind of event that we're talking about.
But it's not going to go.
Sorry, guys, I have to interrupt for just a second. Anisha has an emergency health issue. And so Megan, would you take over chairing the meeting?
Yes.
So what we could do, just because I know everybody needs to go and my battery is 7%, but basically what we can do is we can try to come up and extract from the legislation some points and submit it for the executive, if that's the way to, so that it can pass on time.
That's a Susan question.
Well, first of all, I want to point out the resolution, and I think this is what's causing some of the confusion. The resolution says amplified sound for outdoor performances. So to the world reading this, that's going to be any outdoor performance, which is the corner of my street. If you read our bylaws, and I'm just going by our bylaws, it says if there is a timely issue that comes up, and it'd be helpful maybe if someone could read the section, it has to be a timeliness issue that was not on the agenda, that goes to the exec. We have never had a situation where a resolution couldn't be done in the meeting and then therefore went to the exec. So I'm just
I have actually an idea, Susan, that would address this issue well. We can offer it as a friendly amendment at we can offer an amendment ourselves at the full board meeting. And then if people feel that that amendment doesn't address the concerns raised today, we're just going to vote it down.
What about offering the
friendly amendment? A friendly amendment is something that doesn't change the integrity.
And this wouldn't change the integrity, because what Susan said we should add is the framework of the intro 2068 that explains what it entails.
We have a resident that has had her.
Hang on one sec. I get that, but that still means we would have to vote on this the way it looks tonight. And I don't think the committee is comfortable with that.
Can I say that there's a resident that's had her hand raised for a long time?
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Who is it? I can't see that right
Laura
now.
Sewell.
And I see,
I just see Laura's name.
I don't see her. Can you just call on her for me?
Laura?
Yes.
Okay.
Laura, sorry.
Yes, no worries. I am very supportive of the arts organizations. I've been very outspoken at how they've been left out of this whole process. And I understand why it is due to gatherings and everything else. But I also feel at a complete loss to explain this to the residents that, we serve. And I feel like of all the time we've spent speaking about it, we still don't have the answers to our questions about what's in the legislation. So I don't know quite why that is, why, if it's just not there yet, or if, the committee can't access it and share it with us, the subcommittee.
Sorry, but I don't understand, Laura, what you want to know, in the sense that.
So can I tell you?
Yes, go ahead.
I want to know if I live across the street from Performance Space, PS New York, are they going to be able to have kiki parties? Not that there's anything wrong with that.
But guys, by the way, my battery is dying and my charger is not working, so I may drop out.
Okay,
Sorry.
so let's say I live across the street from a performance space. Are they going to rehearse the same dance number over and over again? Are they allowed, are they going to have events that are loud, at any time of day when something happens repeatedly to you as a resident? It's an undue burden on your quality of life, especially if you can't leave your house during a pandemic. It's really pretty simple. I understand that most organizations want to have a healthy relationship with residents, but it's just not clear from the resolution that the intent is to permit outdoor performances. That's the focus of the reso, and yet it's honed in on amplified sound, which is residents have a knee-jerk reaction to at this point. So I don't feel the reso is the way it's written. It serves the purpose, which is a really high purpose. So
Okay.
I just you guys could revisit it.
Thanks, Laura. Guys, I'm going to take a straw poll from our committee
I
members.
have my hand up.
Oh, okay, Carolyn, go ahead. Sorry.
Would it help if it was specified as a whereas clause that the permits that would have to be issued for the street performances and that they would have to follow the standard city guidelines in regards to sound and hours? Because that's the issue, is amplified sound, which everybody is absolutely terrified of, and the amount of time and when it's allowed to go on. So I don't think anybody is opposed to arts organizations performing and stuff. The issue is about the guidelines about how they would be able to perform. Okay, so is it possible to include a whereas clause in this resolution that could be proposed tonight that would state that, we expect the arts organizations to follow the existing guidelines in regards to sound and hours? Would that make people feel more comfortable? Because there is a limit of 4 hours.
Those are community board. That's only from our community board.
What?
That 4 hours is only from our community board.
Right.
I would be a little bit more comfortable with it, but I think my issue still is I don't know what the city's rules are around those permitting processes now. How long the performances can last, what the decibel levels are, what hours they can perform until. That's my only thing about that.
So if I can tell you, the city has one set of guidelines. The community board has another set of guidelines. Sound permits are issued by the police department, and all of our police precincts respect community board 3 guidelines, which means they end at 6 and they're not more than 4 hours. So if you put it into this legislation, it's not going to apply to the rest of the city because these are community board 3 guidelines.
Okay.
We made our own guidelines because of the problems we have in our community.
Okay.
Right.
I'm gonna
If
put
there
that-
it could be turned into a whereas clause that for this community, that we would follow the existing guidelines for sound and time. Would that satisfy everybody?
You'd have to change the outdoor performances to be more specific, permitted, some, so that people are aware of what you're describing, not, if you just say outdoor performances, it sounds like something on the corner instead of what you're describing, Carolyn.
Right, but it's just sort of like, if that's what I'm asking, is there a way that we could incorporate a clause into this resolution now that would specify that in CB3 that they would follow the existing guidelines for sound and length?
CB3's is the existing guidelines or
Yeah.
That wouldn't, so CB.
So I would say.
Hold on one sec. Wait, Andrew, just one sec. I'm going to have Susan respond to that and then you can talk, okay?
So CB3 doesn't have any guidelines that say you can't perform on the street. And what you're looking at is not for a street performance, I believe. I believe you're looking for more either permitted street activities or permitted organizational events. And I think somehow that has to get into this reso.
All right, Andrew, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself, but one simple whereas clause is not going to unfortunately get my support for this resolution tonight. I want to support a resolution, but this is just too much of a mashed up resolution for me to support.
Okay, I'd like to take a straw poll. Who would like to continue working on this, or who thinks that it's worth working on this resolution tonight to get to a point where we have something to vote on? Are we allowed to do straw polls on the Zoom?
Yeah.
So can everybody, hey guys, committee members who have their videos turned off, any chance you could turn your videos on just so I could see your show of hands? Who wants to continue working on this tonight and try to come to a conclusion on a whereas so that we can get it passed? All in favor, raise your hand.
I'm raising it, just saying, as long as there's a time limit.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm allowed to raise my hand or not.
Would be committee members, right?
Yeah. If you're only referring to committee members, no, I'm not. But
David, are you still there?
What?
David Louie, are you still there? Okay, we go 1, 2. Yeah, and I go 1, 2, 3. That's all we have left on. Okay. Olympia, Carolyn, I think we need to do a little bit more work on this and come back to the committee with it. I mean,
and I think we need to go to exec because of all this situation. It is just, inappropriate, and it's okay. But there needs to be a better way, because otherwise we shouldn't be having a subcommittee when ends up being that we need to come to this committee, and actually that no members of this committee are in the subcommittee. You know what I mean? It just doesn't make sense. And obviously, because your concerns come from a completely different perspective, I need you to understand that this is basically, we are cutting almost a constitutional right of expression to these people. I understand it's the pandemic and everybody has special privileges, but right now we are allowing, sorry, I'm screaming and my kids are sleeping, but if this is just, to me, it is, I'm ashamed almost to be part of this community board at this point, just because I do live in this neighborhood and I have little kids that are sleeping right now, right? So it's not that I don't know what quality of life means, but I also know very deeply what is happening right now in the arts and cultural world and how intrinsical it is to the identity of this district. And the fact that this resolution that is time sensitive is being blocked in this way, and for the reasons that have been raised that all have to do with, bad agents of nightlife, it really, to me, is inappropriate.
I don't think anybody on this committee is anti-arts. I just think we want to vote on something that's responsible, and we want to do it with as much information as possible.
Yes,
that's a terribly unfair assessment of what's happening here at Olympia tonight.
Yes.
So
I mean, I understand your perspective.
We have our opinions, but
yes,
bring us a resolution that we can vote on.
I'm gonna wrap this up. Okay, we're gonna. Yes. That's that for this discussion.
But I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware that this needs to be discussed at the executive, not as the resolution to be continued, but this unfortunate situation, because it is not okay as a point of order for this kind of meetings to need to be occurring 2 and 3 times. Like, otherwise, why do we have a subcommittee, right? It never happened before.
And I think it's something we need to take up with Olympia. Guys, we have to move on. Sorry. Next order on the agenda.
Carolyn has her hand raised.
Should we vote on the previous resolution, or are we? We voted on one resolution.
Yeah, you should vote on the other resolution.
Okay.
You should probably vote on this one too. You can't just ignore it.
Okay. So the first vote is going to be for the first arts and culture resolution. Sorry. Can you guys still see that? And then the second vote is going to be for the second arts and cultural resolution. Everyone understand what we're voting on?
Can I just ask for clarification? Are you just voting on the resolution, yes or no, or are you voting on bringing it back or amending it, further work on it?
Okay, so the first arts and cultural resolution, it's a vote to approve. And that's what we're going to vote on now. The second one, I'll welcome any motion to, bring it back to committee. Happy to do that.
I think, sorry, but the proper way to do it is you need to vote yes or no. Then if it is no, as it seems from the straw poll, then you need to, then it didn't pass. So then we as a subcommittee will have to decide what we want to do with it.
Okay, so the first,
You can refer something back. I mean, they could do both. They could vote yes or no, as you suggested, and then also vote to, to work on it further.
okay, let's just take the first one. The first arts and culture resolution, the resolution is to approve. Anisha Stephen, not here. Megan Joy, yes.
Actually, she's here, I think.
No, she called me. She has a health issue.
Alistair Economakis,
Yes.
Andrea Gordillo,
Yes.
Herman Hewitt. Sorry, he's not here. Joe Kern's not here. David Louie. Alexander Militano.
Sorry, I'm here. It's yes.
You're yes, okay.
Yes.
You're yes, okay. Richard Ropiak, absent. Rodney Washington, absent. Andrew Comey.
Yes.
Okay. Second one, motion to, we're going to first vote on a motion to approve. And if you want, after that, we can come up with some other action on where, if we wanted to come back or something like that. Anisha Stephen, not here. Megan Joy, I'm a no. Alistair Economakis,
Yes.
Andrea Gordillo,
Just so I'm clear, the vote is a yes to approve the second resolution.
the second resolution as it's written. Sorry, and it's not with that highlighted bit.
Yes.
Okay. Alexander Militano,
No.
Andrew Comey,
No.
anybody want to propose an actionable item for that resolution to?
Sorry, Megan, for the record, so it's 3 no and 2 yes?
Yes.
Yeah, so basically, unfortunately, I know Anissa is not feeling well, but this is also a very close call, and I'm pretty sure Anissa would have voted yes. So it's okay.
You don't know that. Come on.
I mean, she called me earlier and she discussed this legislation with me, but it's okay, no problem. But it is important also to keep this in mind when we discuss this at exec, because this is really not a proper way to conduct business. But I am okay with all of this.
I'm not going to get into it, but there's nothing inappropriate on how we're voting tonight on this item.
No. No. I'm not saying about how we're voting about this item. And I made clear what is the point of order that I'm asking here. It has to do with proper way of contacting business. Because again, if somebody was interested in this subject, the way we do it with the other subcommittees, when a NIGHTS subcommittee give us something at the land use, if we're interested, we attend the NIGHTS subcommittee meeting and we discuss it there. So this is the way in which properly CB3 operates. And this is not, of course, the way it has been happening here. We are asked to come in 3 extra meetings every time. So that's what I mean, Megan.
Yeah,
So does it make more sense?
I think there's been an issue with timing on this committee for a long time. And
Yeah, and it's not our fault in the sense, neither your fault but ours, but we are all suffering from that. And so this is not okay, especially because we find ourselves in these time sensitive situations with people that depend on us as a community and we cannot serve them.
I agree. Okay. Sorry, guys. Okay. That's it for that. Okay, so then it is up to the Arts and Cultural Committee whether they can or want to take this to exec. I think that's obviously something that Carolyn and has to present to Alicia or get approved by Alicia. So the last thing we have on our agenda is just the vote to adjourn.
Don't you have the special district on?
Shoot, sorry, guys.
I would be perfectly comfortable kicking the special district another month, being that we have such a small group of committee members here tonight.
Can I get a show of hands who's okay with that? Or are we allowed to do that, Susan?
Sure.
Okay. Can I get a show of hands on who's willing to put the special district to December's meeting? Okay, that's the majority of us. Okay, that's great. Great idea, Andrew. We'll do that. So now it's just a vote to adjourn.
The only thing, Megan, I would say on that is we keep putting this on the agenda as the last item, and then the clock seems to be kicking out. So if we're serious about it, we should front load it so we can actually have some time to discuss it.
That's fair. I'll put that in the minutes. Okay, vote to adjourn. Anisha Stephen, Megan Joy, yes. Alistair Economakis, yes. Oh, sorry. you can vote for yourself, I guess. Andrea Gordillo?
Yes.
Herman Hewitt, no. Joe Kearns, no. David Louie?
Yes.
Alexandra Militano?
Yes.
Richard Ropiak? No. Rodney Washington? No. Andrew Comey?
No. I mean, yes.
Okay.
No, I don't want to adjourn. I want to stay here longer. No, yes.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate your patience. I know this is obviously a very emotional issue because we're dealing with people's livelihoods and people's quality of life. So, you know, I'd rather wait a little while and get it done right. All right. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.